I still had the numbers on from when I did the grip video. If you've subscribed, you know what I mean. Video's up here. Welcome back to yet another episode. It's so good to see you all again. I'm your friendly neighborhood coach Jose, and I'm just doing the grip right now. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the second serve, or more commonly known as the kick serve. All that serving is tough work. Yeah, I'm already building up a bit of a sweat. Here in Brisbane, we get a lot of humidity and we get a lot of heat. Today we're talking about second serves and in particular the kick second serve. Now, what makes it kick in particular? Well, let me show you. The kick serve typically happens by the way you brush the ball. Now, the way it works is if it's kicking more to the right, which is a kick serve, if it's moving towards the left or curling towards the left after it hits the ground, that's more commonly known as a slice serve. Kick goes right, slice goes left. That's if you're a righty. If you're a lefty, it's the opposite. So I'm describing everything here as a righty, and if you're a lefty, just do the opposite, or just understand as the opposite. The way it works is when I brush the ball, I'm gonna brush the ball as if it's a clock and go from my 7 o'clock here to about 2 o'clock over here. That's gonna create a little bit of a side spin while still spinning up and around, okay? A little bit of a diagonal spin. Now what happens when it spins this way, it's then gonna hit the ground and it's gonna move in that direction because it's gonna pull on the ground in that particular direction that it's spinning in. Does that make sense? Now there's another version of the kick serve where it's moving more through the court. So that's more like a top spin. So instead of going from around a 7 o'clock to a 2 o'clock, you're more brushing under the ball. So 6 to 12 or 6 to 1. And that's gonna brush the ball more in a vertical path. And when it hits the ground, it's gonna bounce up and bounce more through the court. That's the two typical second serve actions. Now with both these actions, you gotta make sure you get under the ball and brush it up, across, or brush it up and over. This way you stay away from the net, which gives you good net clearance so you don't make mistakes into the net, and you get plenty of spin so you bring that ball back into the court before it goes past the service line. Let's check it out. Now I made a kick serve basics lesson in the past. You can go check it out up here. I'll link you to it. And you can go check out on the very basics of how to do the second serves. It works more on the muscle memory of how to get that brushing action under and up the back of the ball. This is gonna be a little bit more of a full-on breakdown with the second serve, or kick serve I should say. When you're standing, you stand as normal as you do for a first serve. So a little bit more of a side-on stance with your front toe pointing into the court. With the action, this is a bit of a common error I see in players. You don't need to throw that ball way behind you. Now, yes, there's a difference in ball toss between first and second serve. For the first serve, you want that ball toss more into the court so you can get good forward momentum and good power on your serve, on your first serve, because you're really just slapping that one in. For the second serve, you want to benefit from as much spin as possible. Yes, you can get a lot more spin if the ball is a little bit more behind you, but then you're losing power. Now don't get me wrong, if you've got a really fast whipping action on your serve, you can still get a lot of power on it, but this is where it becomes a little bit more injury prone. So what I mean by this is just think about it. If you put your arm straight up and then put it slightly more behind you, okay, or if you've got like a door, everyone's got a door, stand underneath the door and hold onto the frame and take a step forward and have your shoulder now pushing back behind you. Now what you want to do with that is now try and push your arm forward on that door and feel that tension on your shoulder and throughout your entire arm. Now if you do that over a long period of time and over repetitively, that's putting that pressure on your joint for that second serve, which I see some coaches teach that. Don't get me wrong, you can use this serve, okay? I'm not going to force you to do anything that you don't want to try out for yourself, okay? You're more than welcome to try out throwing the ball a little bit more behind you and trying to get more of that brushing action. I don't recommend it to my students because it can cause more injuries into the shoulder down the track. definitely not straight away. It takes time for these sort of things to come up. Doing it over time and time and time, you can draw injuries in your shoulder, elbow, and wrist by putting that pressure behind you over time. The other thing I see with that is bending at the back. Now, if you're bending at the back, same sort of thing. You can definitely get benefits from it by getting a lot more rip up the back of the ball and getting more spin, but then you look at the injuries from that. A lot of players that do that over time get injuries in their back. Andy Murray, for example. Now, I know he didn't get a back injury, he had more hip injury over his career, but he did have a back injury at one stage when he used to have that big arch back behind him. He did change that slightly towards the end of his career, but you get what I'm trying to say here. By putting more pressure on your joints and your back and all these other parts of your body over time can lead to injury. So you want to try and avoid that as much as possible. I digress. We're going to focus now on the brushing part. When you do the second serve, I like to teach students about just brushing the ball over the top of your hand to get that first action of the muscle memory. I like to teach in stages, as you've probably seen in some of my past tutorials. Once you get that first stage, then you can move on to the next stage. Now, some people learn quickly and some people learn a little bit slower. Everyone learns differently, and I like to try and cater for everybody. So that's why I teach the very basics and then go little bit harder every time. So increase the progressions. First stage is about brushing up the back of the ball. So this one is a little bit more of the top spin. Now, getting more of the kick to go right is all you're doing is you're coming across. So I'll show you the camera here. So you're coming across slightly. So more, like I said, from around 7 o'clock here, or 7 o'clock for me, and 1 or 2 o'clock over here. So you're getting more of this, or this side spin, okay, or diagonal, however you want to describe it. So that is the difference between the top spin and the kick serve, by coming across more, or coming up more. What we're doing here for the second serve is a little bit different to the first serve. First serve, when you bring that racket back and up, you're keeping the top of the racket here pointing more towards the ball, okay? You want them to line up. So the tip of the racket pointing towards the ball when you throw it up, okay? Or as close as possible. Now, that's the first serve. You don't drop it down your back for the first serve. What you do is the first serve, you come here, it lags back. Now, yes, it does drop back, but it doesn't go down your back. Down your back is the second serve. You want to be able to get down and brush that ball up as much as possible. Think about it like this, a forehand or backhand. If I wanted to get more spin on my forehand or my backhand, I'm going to go more down low and brush the ball up. Same exact thing for a second serve. I'm going to go down low, down my back, and brush that ball more up so I can get that ball to arc up over the net and bounce back in before it goes past the service line. Again, you can go back to my basics of how to do or build up the wrist strength on your second serve. Then you can come back to this episode and learn a little bit more of the in-depth look at the second serve. We're going down the back, and then what we're doing here is bringing the elbow up to the ball, and then we're going to let the racket lag back. All that force is coming up while the racket is lagging, and then we're going to snap the wrist all the way under and up the back of the ball. I like to describe it in an analogy. Think about it like you have a Ferrari. Your arm is the Ferrari. When you put your foot on the gas, what happens to you? Woof, you lean back, everything gets thrown back after you put your foot on the gas on full blast. Now that's what's happening with your arm here. You're putting your foot on the gas and your racket is getting thrown back because of all that force. When you put your foot on the brakes, what happens? Everything goes flying forward, doesn't it? So that's kind of what's happening here. You don't put your foot on the brakes completely on your arm. Your arm still flows, but then your wrist catches up and then releases all the way through. That's the easiest way I like to describe it for some of my juniors, and it makes sense for them. Your force is coming up, and then at the last second, your wrist is snapping all the way through because of that force, okay? Give it a try by pegging a ball, okay? If you peg a ball as high as you possibly can, you're gonna find yourself getting your elbow up and then your wrist snapping at the last second to brush the ball, or to throw the ball as high as you can, I should say. That's the same action with the second serve. You're trying to brush up the back of the ball. Don't try and hit force through the ball so much. It's just more so about brushing it as high as you can here. Yes, we want to hit the ball in, so that's the next part of this, where you do pronate your wrist coming forward more. So you're brushing up and then pronating forward with your wrist and then coming around to finish. But don't stress too much about the finish. If you're just learning this for the first time, like I said, I like to coach in stages and break it up by little bit and make it easy for you to learn. First stage, just rolling that ball up. Second stage is then getting that elbow and roll. And then the third stage is elbow, roll, pronate. Now you can see by how I'm hitting that ball is I'm getting under and I'm brushing up the back of the ball and brushing it over all the way as far as my wrist can go. That way I can get the maximum amount of range of motion for my wrist and the maximum amount of spin on the ball possible. Two parts I did forget to touch on, and I'll try and do this quickly because it's about to rain. Why is it every time I teach the second serve it rains? The trophy position and the tilt. Now you want to make sure that you're bringing your left shoulder, I'm talking as if you're righty, you're bringing your left shoulder up and your right shoulder is down. So you've got this nice tilting action. With that, you should notice that your hips come more forward into the court, so you've got a little bit of a hip tilt. All of this trophy position action is about loading yourself up or coiling yourself up, as some coaches may say, so you can get the most energy up into the ball. I like to use the Silver Surfer from the Fantastic Four as a little bit of a description. And if I can, I'll try and put a clip into here, is he gets the energy from his board. Now as tennis players, we don't have a board, we've got the court. So we get the energy from the court and we bring it up and through our body into the ball. This is the easiest description I have for generating the most power, is getting it from the ground all the way through and up into the ball. You may have heard some coaches talk about it in a kinetic chain. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. You load that kinetic chain and spring up into the ball to generate the most amount of power. Now, if you've got everything working in time, you should be able to generate all the amount of spin and power so you can control that ball where you want it to go. Now, that's the second serve breakdown. Now, I know it's a little bit choppy and a little bit all over the place. I'll try and edit it together so it makes sense. All the basics is making sure you load up properly, use that hip and the tilt so you can generate that springing action up into the ball by getting your elbow first, then that wrist, or then the arm coming up and the wrist brushing the ball all the way over and through. If anything doesn't make sense in this video, please let me know in the comments below and I'll try and explain it a little bit more in depth. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you got something out of it, please remember to like and subscribe, and that way I can catch you in the next episode. Have a great Christmas.